Okay.
All right.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Amanda Calendar, and this is another episode of the More Sugar podcast, where we have conversations to help heal and encourage. Um, for my series, I was doing big conversations. I'm turning 50 tomorrow, actually, and I decided to touch on conversations that have affected me throughout my life, and most definitely in the book "Sugar My Grits: Grief to Gratitude Through Grace." And one of those things that affected me really heavily was the death of my cousin due to a domestic violence situation. So I thought it only proper to bring on someone who could speak to that actually went through it and survived, and she doesn't look like what she's been through. So my guest is a high school friend of mine, Miss Shanda Brown. Introduce yourself to the audience.
Hello everyone. I am Shonda. You could take the hair out, right?
You just Shanda Brown.
I'm
Okay.
just Shonda Brown, like I was,
Okay.
you
Okay.
can take the
Check
hair out.
me.
But
Shanda
yeah,
Brown.
right. So yeah, I'm Shonda Brown. Like Amanda said, we go back. I don't even want to think about what is it, 30 years? That's a little
Yeah,
creepy.
we started at seventh and eighth
Actually,
grade.
longer than 30 years, believe it
Yeah.
or not.
You did
But
seventh and
it's
eighth grade, right?
closer to 35 years. And so I am currently a licensed social worker, still a domestic violence advocate here in the state of New Jersey. And I continue to do work with children and women, primarily, but families. But, the babies have my heart. So, yeah, a self-published author of There's Hope on the Other Side, which is a memoir of my own personal experience with domestic violence.
Okay. So I want to start with a hard question that I had asked. I had several people ask me, and it's something that went in the back of my head when I immediately found out that my cousin was in what I would assume was a situation, but didn't know it was that bad.
hmm
Uh, what do you say to people that judge or have negative things to say about women that stay in abusive relationships?
Well, first I'll say that abusive relationships do not have gender bias, right? So it could
Mhm.
be men and women. First, secondly, I would compare it to you having, like, how would you feel if you had a nightmare and then you had someone else to tell you how you should have felt while you were experiencing the nightmare,
Mhm.
right? That's the analogy given. And so if you can't speak to someone else's experience if it's not something that you've lived yourself, right?
Mhm.
We all have our own experiences. We all have our own tolerance level for whatever it is that we're enduring. And it goes to violence, but it could also go to, neglect and other things. So don't judge someone, or don't be so quick to judge someone if you have not walked even an inch in their shoes.
So there's basically levels to domestic violence.
There's definitely
Physical.
levels,
It's not just physical abuse.
right? There's definitely people tend to, we lean into the physical because
Right.
we that's what we, especially in our culture, right, in our community, we've seen people walk around with a black eye, busted lip, sometimes even a missing tooth and things like that. But DV, or violence and trauma, it goes way deeper. You have the physical, you have the mental, you have the emotional, you have the financial, and then on a larger scale, we even have institutional, right? What our people endure in prisons and things like that. So it's greater than just physical.
Okay.
hmm
And you've always, even in school, I remember you growing up and what because I deemed a very spiritual upbringing.
yes.
And is it difficult to insert that into your work? Because a lot of times when a woman has been through so much, it's hard to get them. Do you say trust God and they because you know how we have this the separation of church and state
Yeah. hmm
laws. So
hmm
is your spirituality something that you insert into your work, and do you get good results from it?
I'm gonna say like this. Whenever the opportunity presents itself, I'm always gonna talk about God,
Right.
right? I'm not a Christian counselor, but I do operate as a Christian counselor, if that makes any
Okay,
sense,
it
because you do
does.
have Christian counselors. I will say that initially I did not know how to merge the two. I
Hmm.
didn't know how to merge spiritual with professional, because again, we have all these mandates, and we have all of these code of ethics and things like that, and we're not supposed to impose, that's call it an imposition, right? We're not supposed to impose our beliefs on our clients. I will say, if the client is inclined to bring up God, then we're gonna have a good old time with it. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Um, I'm way more comfortable with it now though than I was initially. I had to figure it out. Like, okay, so if they talk about God, be it, regardless of whatever religion it's coming from, if they bring it up, like, what do I say and what's the appropriate response, so that I'm not violating, like you said, the professional side of it, keeping it separate the way that they say. But I am way more comfortable now. I'm more comfortable now because I know more about me.
Do you think those mandates are in place to protect you or the client? Because sometimes when I go to my therapist and she's helping me,
Hmm.
I, early on as a patient, I listened, and then
Hmm.
as I became more spiritual and got a close relationship with God, there's times I wish I heard that from her
Hmm.
as well. So how do you, there has to be a point where I mean, you can't mess up your license and say screw this, I'm gonna just tell this lady. But
Uh,
can't you see when people like when they're oozing like I think this person needs a hug or this person actually needs me to like they need to come to church.
so listen, I think there are all type of protective measures, and you're right. It is for both. It's for us, the professional, and for the clients that we're providing services for. And so it's always good to ask a question. Anytime we're unsure or uncertain, is it okay if I touch your hand?
Okay.
Right? Is it okay if I give you a hug? And then sometimes on the flip side of that, the clients ask, "Is it okay if I hug you?" I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
"Girl, absolutely. Get over here. Give me a hug.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time maintaining clear boundaries,
Boundary.
because we don't ever want to mix get it mixed
Or
up.
else you have a house full of people that say, I'm going to stay with Miss Brown. Miss Brown.
Exactly. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We ain't doing that. So
As
yeah.
soon as I posted that I was talking about this,
Mhm.
a friend of mine shared it and she said she couldn't wait to listen to the conversation because she knows a friend that's going through it.
Mhm.
For me personally, going through it as a family member without hijacking my cousin's story, it's just like I'm in it.
You are in it because
So
trauma
what
is
do you
vicarious.
yeah, so what do you do or what advice do you have for family members that are currently have people in the situation? Because aside from the legal measures that they want you to take, oh, get a restraining order. Again, I'm only speaking to the extreme side of my experience. Oh, get a restraining order or change your locks. The five basic things you do, but then you read these horrific stories about women who've been harmed or kids who've been beaten because men or whoever overstep these bounds that people this little piece of paper a protect order protection that they think is going to protect them. I had a conversation with the guy that murdered my cousin at least a week before he killed her, and I said to him, I'm like, she doesn't want to be with you anymore, just leave her alone. So in my guilt, am I thinking like, is there something more I could have done or said, or what do you have advice you have? My therapist said to me that he was going to do what he was going to do regardless of what I said because he had it in his mind already. So I
Yeah.
need to get away from the guilt that there was something I could have done. But is there anything, not just in that situation, advice that you have for family members of people that's in this situation?
I'm gonna say, like, we have to respect where people are, right? And we go back to talking about boundaries. I can speak to my own personal experience, and then, but everybody, and know that everybody's experience is different, right? So we all have our own individual journey. And so for me, when I reached my breaking point, like, my family knew, my mom knew,
Mm-hmm.
but she respected my marriage. Um, but at the same time, she was like dropping me little things like, hey, have you ever heard of this organization? They deal with violence against women. Have you ever heard of this organization and things like. She was just sending me like different things like that. And when it took for me to call her, well, when I finally built up the nerves to call her, like, Mom, I'm tired, right? She said, I was waiting for you to call. I've been waiting for you to call. And she was ready and she had the resource available. And she gave me a number, right? And I reached out and I called. But it was when I was ready. So what I can say for those people, because I get calls all the time, inboxes, text messages, different things like that. The best thing you could do is offer the support of where the person is and not where you want them to be. Because you can say, girl, leave, or cousin, leave, or auntie, leave, you don't deserve that, or, unc, you don't deserve whatever, whoever it is. We want you to leave, right? Because we want you to be safe. And, you wanted your cousin to be safe. I agree with your therapist in that he had already had his mind made up. His mind was made up. He was going to do what he was going to do. So, there, I would say, I know it's a burden of guilt on you, but it's not a burden. That's not your burden to carry. In a perfect world, there would have been like an aha moment from something that you both spoke about while you were in conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
However, if once somebody has their mind made up, it's a done deal. And honestly, we don't really know. I mean, I don't know what mental health things he was going through. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some things going on and running in the background that we're not even aware of. And we're talking to these people. We're talking to individuals that put on a facade as though, they have this face, and,
Mm-hmm.
and they mastered it and they got it down real good. You know what I'm saying? And they look like you and me, and
Yes.
they can walk the walk and they can talk the talk, but when they walk away, you don't see the grimace that's on their face. You know what I'm saying? They're grimacing, or like they're going through the motions and things like that. And it's not for us to try to pick or choose, like, oh, well, I wonder what he was thinking, or I wonder, it's that's not for us to do. So the best thing for me, the advice that I would give and that I oftentimes give is just meet them where they are. You may know, you can just simply suggest, like, listen, whenever you're ready, whatever you need, I'm here for you to support you. If you want to leave, we can do that. If you want to stay, I don't agree, right? But I'm here, in whatever capacity that you need me. Ooh, girl. Let's see. We met in 96.
Mm-hmm.
We started dating. We had our oldest son. We married in 98, and I finally left in 2002. So it was a total 6 years.
Was it? I know who he is. Was it at the height of his career?
No, he
Yeah.
didn't have it. He had none of that when I met him. No.
Really?
No, mm-mm. No, it
And
came it
it came.
came during while we were together. Yeah,
Do you think he put that anger into his career?
absolutely. He did, but it was misplaced, right? And so I will say that um, oftentimes too, alcohol and drugs play a big part, right? Because these are coping mechanisms
Mm-hmm.
for people. And or for abusers,
Mm-hmm.
and for abuse, the ones that are getting abused, sometimes that's their way of coping.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, there was some addiction, there was some definite addiction there that had existed prior to us getting in a relationship.
Mm. Did your kids ever find out?
Absolutely. Mhm.
So they were kids in that are victims as well, correct?
Yes.
Because of what they see.
Well, I will say this, they never saw, but they definitely heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you go, do you just because I'm everything with me is extreme, and so again, aside from my cousin's situation, the only other movies that have a tendency to stick with me, and I'm thinking about the movie with J Lo when I can't remember the name, where when she just made up her mind and she decided to go, there was bags packed, there was things here and there,
Enough.
enough.
Hmm.
So does enough jar with reality?
enough was was a bit extreme, right? Because
Right,
you're not taking secret, karate lessons and boxing.
right, 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 right.
Like, I mean, for those of us, listen, for those of us that have, you know, power to we good. That's great that you had the opportunity to do that. But for I'm gonna say for me, what I would consider me like the average person, we don't have that opportunity. I will say I can speak to my story, right?
Mhm,
When so we were together. We were homeowners in Maplewood, New Jersey, and things just were not going right. So we were in the process of putting our house on the sale for market, and at the same time, I was in the midst of making up my mind, like, if you don't leave, he's going to kill you. That was the thought in my head, and I'm like, I need to live for my children, right?
mhm,
So my children were my fighting grace, and
mhm,
so I did have bags packed though. I ain't even gonna lie. Packed up my car with my kids and some storage keepers and things like that because I called the number that my mom gave me, and she, when I called, they give you 20, well, at that time, because I don't think the organization exists anymore. That's which is a whole nother issue. They give you 24 hours to respond. Like, they give you a meeting place. You can't tell anybody, what it is, and you have the police. You'll meet a police escort, and they'll bring you, because we did move into a DV shelter, right,
mhm.
to get out of it. And so I had a plan. I packed up my stuff, and but in the middle of that, he called and was like, "Yeah, I need you to come and get me." And I'm like, "Okay, all
You think
right."
he had an idea that you was breaking, and
He
he just
didn't know.
making up an excuse? He
He
didn't
didn't
know.
know. He didn't know. Mm-mm. He didn't know. He didn't realize it until some hours later, after I was able to, think quick on the feet. Went and got him, came back. Like, where are the kids? Oh, no, they're with the parents. They were my parents at the time. Went back to the house and met with the realtor, completed the paperwork to put the paper that,
Wow.
business as usual. You know what I'm saying? We
Yeah,
gotta,
you gotta keep a
right?
straight face.
Right.
Yeah.
So did that so that he wouldn't be so suspicious, and ultimately left, like, made up a like, "Hey, I gotta run to the bank right quick. I'll be right back." "Oh no, I'll come with you." "No, no, no, I'll be right back." And I remember backing out of the driveway, looking, and he was standing in the doorway, and I left, and I never went. That was it. I went to pick up my kids, my children, and went to meet the officer, and then that was our new beginning.
What was the straw that broke the camel's back for you? Or was it a combination of things?
Whew. It was definitely a combination of things, but I believe the last act of violence scared me, to the point where I thought that he was going to kill me. And that really, I never really, never really think about that. Never really think that, what, and going through it, I never thought that he was hurting me to take my life.
You just thought he was angry at the time.
I thought, he got some issues. He's blowing off some steam. Is it right? No, but married for better, for worse, and all that other good stuff. But after a while, it became a mental struggle for me, because
Mhm.
I knew that I never wanted to be divorced, right? And so that was a thing for me also.
Right.
Didn't want to be a divorced Black woman or African American woman with 3 children, becoming a statistic. And this is before me returning to college and,
Mhm.
seeking after the degrees and things like that. This is in the, I'm working multiple jobs and taking care of the children and taking care of the household and things like that. And so that was a part of the struggle, that kept me there, right?
Mhm.
And I will say the straw that broke the camel's back was, there's this one night, and he was just so violent. He was so drunk, and it seemed like he didn't even know who he was.
Mm.
And that scared me. Like, for you
Gotcha.
to lose yourself and not be able to recognize who I am made me feel like at any given point that he would have crossed the line and caused harm to my children, other than the emotional and mental abuse that they endured, right? He was never physical with the children.
With the children. Okay.
Yeah. Hmm.
So you mentioned that he had other issues that caused him to be abusive.
Yes.
So aside from all the trauma that people have and they unleash on the world because of not getting help, what do you think makes a person get to that point where they actually want.
I do believe that it is mocked behavior. So there was a history of violence in the family, in his family, but there was also a history of violence in my family. So, you know, there was abuse, women in my family that had been abused,
Mhm.
right? And then there were men in his family that were abusers. And so we were just, you know, copying the behavior of what we had seen. Um, I know for a fact that he witnessed his grandfather almost take the life of his grandmother. You know, they have since, you know, passed away, but, you know, so there were some things that he saw. He became, his mom passed away when he was young. And so, young meaning like 10 years old. And then it was around that age where he started with the drugs.
Gotcha.
So, you know, so there was just like a whole lot of, you know, it was a snowball effect. One thing led to another. I saw violence in my home as a child.
Mhm.
And, you know, growing up, I always swore that's never going to happen to me, never going to happen to me. And then, you know, I look up and I'm smack, you know, I'm right in the middle of it. For a time I did, you know, oh, I love him. You know, if I love him enough, you know,
Mhm.
the things that we tell ourselves, if I love him enough, you know, he'll change. And going off of the things that he said, you know, the promises that he made. Oh no, I'm gonna get better. I'm never gonna do it again. You know, the when I tell you it's so much stuff, the, you know, the guilt, you know, threatening to harm, you know,
Harm
self-harm,
yourself. Yeah.
to harm himself, you know, in front of me with weapons and things like that. And it was really, it was big, it was a lot. And me and my little tiny self trying to take it on, thinking I could save him from his world, not realizing that I was causing more damage than good, you know, doing more harm to myself.
What?
Honestly, it was one day I started the Testimony Tuesday on Facebook.
Mhm.
And this is when I became aware, you know, that domestic violence even had an awareness month because I never knew that. And
Mhm.
so I decided to, you know, make a blurb on Facebook and my inbox blew up. I was like, wow. Um, I had been having a conversation about God because with God, and I was saying, you know, Lord, I know that you've given me this for a reason because there are so many women that have experienced it that will never tell their story,
Mhm.
right? And I've had conversations with them, but for their own reasons, they choose not to tell their story. They choose not to make it a public thing, you know, or, you know, just public. But, you know, I felt like God was nudging me to say, like, this is something that you're supposed to be doing because there's other people that need to know that there's a way out. Right. Not that I'm the only person, but there were people that wouldn't normally say anything, you know,
Mhm.
and my inbox blew up and there were people from other countries and there were women, you know, speaking other dialects and there were people
Shut
that
up.
had cultural barriers and things like that. And I was like, okay, God, I'm out here now, you know, what do I do with all of this? And so the more that others, you know, just from the one blurb, you know, it was, you know, I went through that too. And you know, thank you for sharing because I experienced that too. And then the one person that reached out to me that kind of gave me like a whole new perspective was my I call her my bonus daughter's mother.
Mhm.
And she reached out to me and she was like, you know, we have very similar stories. Because she and I never had a conversation. You know, you the new girl, you the old girl, you the arch nemesis type thing.
Mhm.
And so we never had a conversation. She didn't know my experience with him, and I didn't know all of her experience with him. And then she shared some things, and I was just like, I was blown away.
Wow.
I was really blown away. And so, yeah, I really feel like it was, you know, God just He led me to it because at first I was fearful and I was ashamed. You know, I felt like I was ashamed. Like, why are you even, you know, why would you, why?
Yeah.
You know, like, what's the purpose of it? But now that I'm literally on the other side of it, I understand the why.
So, is there? Can you tell the process of leaving in case someone's listening and they say, "Okay, what do I have to go through?" Or is it like a top secret thing that in case somebody watching and they want to do somebody some harm, that they know, okay, these are things I need to look for in case you try to leave. Or what should women, once they call that number and you say yes, there's directly a passage to safety. All you
There's a
do is say yes.
yes, there's a direct passage to safety. Depending on where you are. So some cities now, what's happening is some cities don't have DV shelters, so they will send you. Yeah, believe it or not, that's a thing. Some of the shelters that were open and available, they're now closed down. Um, but there are a plethora of resources. You know what I'm saying? And so you're correct in that I would not be able to divulge, like, step by
Yeah.
step what to do. However, there are organizations like the Domestic Violence Response Team. You can contact them. They're cross county. I know that they're in Union County, they're in Essex County. You could also call the DV hotline number. And if you are receiving counseling of some sort, um, you should also be able to get, some resource information from them as well.
Okay. And so,
Hmm.
what other, again, what other ways do abuse presents themselves besides physically and verbally? Because sometimes people say, "Well, he didn't hit me, or he didn't curse me out, or she." Again, I don't want to make it seem like this is all men doing this because
Right.
it's a like you said, it's a cross gender situation where it happens with women too.
Hmm.
So besides physical and verbal abuse, what are some signs that people should look?
One of the largest types of abuse is financial abuse.
Mm,
That's where you're not working. And so the abuser controls all of the money. They're rationing it out to you, or maybe they're not giving it to you at all. And so at some point, like, people have told me that they felt like they were being held hostage because they're not working, they don't have the education to get a job, or they don't have the work experience, or maybe they don't feel like they are financially fit to provide for their family. If they were to take their family, like, where am I going to go, who's going to help me? There's a number of things at play. There's mental abuse, the name calling, the insults. There's and in addition to that, there's elder abuse. People, we
yes.
don't consider it, right, but there's also elder abuse. Back to the institutional abuse, the different things that we are.
What is the abuse that Wendy Williams is going through right now?
I can't speak to that. I have no idea. I just asked someone the other day, like, what's
It's
going on with
financial.
her?
Yeah, I think it's financial abuse. I think what it is that money is.
Is someone else controlling her money? Is that what it is?
Yeah, she's under conservatorship like Britney Spears was.
That's financial. That's definitely financial abuse.
But the
Mm-hmm.
thing was is that her son was her power of attorney.
Mm-hmm.
And everything was going smooth. But again, we got to be careful what we do. He started spending large sums of money, which triggered the bank. Because if you have a power of attorney, if you have $20 million in the bank and you
Mm-hmm.
have certain spending habits, and here comes your power of attorney spending large amounts of money,
Right.
you come back to the bank at some point and say, hey, the power of attorney didn't do what they were supposed to do. So technically, the bank is protecting themselves
Yeah.
in the aspect. And so that's where I think people get lost in the fact that his spending habits triggered the bank, which had a judge input a conservatorship, which is a stranger. So if you didn't want a stranger running your
Yeah. 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 I mean, you taking somebody else's money, you out there spending it, you free balling. So now the result of that is now his mother is in a predicament
yes, a
because
bad
of his
predicament.
right, because of his irresponsibility. I wouldn't necessarily say that that was abuse. I would just say that, I mean, in a way it is, but I don't think he did it intentionally to hurt his mother. I
Yeah,
think he was, he's just a young kid and he wanted to flex and live a live a life, a lavish lifestyle off of his mother.
beyond your means.
Yeah.
Sexual abuse.
Mhm.
You talked about that in your book.
Yes. Also, one of the abuses, definitely. Mhm.
It's a subject that is so because of people you wonder what someone is gonna think of you if that
Right.
happens. to you. And
Right.
even if you're a kid, um, because I know a lot of kids that have a lot of adults that have suffered through it, and I see
Mhm.
them suffer through life
Yeah.
because they don't want to get the help because it's so traumatic to even tell the story.
Mhm.
So, as a therapist, you have to tell the story correctly in order to get help for it.
Right.
So, how do you
Mhm.
walk somebody through getting them to tell their story about sexual abuse in order to help them? Even though that's probably not your field, but it's something. What made you comfortable enough to tell that story?
There's a number of things that were in play with that. So I needed to be released from it. It was something that I carried for a really long time. Um, I was 6 years old when it happened, and well, when it happened the first time, I'll say,
Mhm,
and I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell my mother. Because my mom is definitely my go-to person. I didn't even tell her till I was pregnant with my third child. She had no idea. And so the first thing she said, why didn't you tell me? And I'm like, well, I was 6,
mhm,
and I was afraid. And he threatened me and he said that he was going to do all these awful things. And him being my abuser, he was also the same person that I saw physically abuse my mom.
mm,
And so there were lots of things going on at the same time. And so I was encouraged to share because I needed to be released from it. Um, it was just something that, you know, I tried to share with people that I thought, were close to me growing up. And it was just like, oh, yeah, well, it happened to me too. And I'm like, okay, but what do we do with that?
right,
You know what I'm saying? Like it happened, and we're saying it like it's some type of like we're wearing a medallion around our neck or something like that. That's not like an honor badge.
right.
It's actually something that does need to be talked about, and that's not talked about often enough in our community. And no, it's not a round table dinner discussion.
It's
It's
not
absolutely not.
because
However,
the uncle that did it is at the dinner table.
right. And so, when or where do we make time and space to have these conversations?
Mhm,
And so it was me saying this is a part of me. This is a part of me that I can't change. This is a part of me that I now accept, and I know that it was not my fault because I carry blame, and it helped me to overcome some of the trauma, not all of it.
mhm.
It helped me to address some of my trauma because it took for me to actually write the book for me to realize, like, kind of you just go back and you see all of these things. Well, I saw it as like, wow, that whole time in my life affected every relationship that I had.
That sounds about the act.
Every
Yeah.
every relationship that I had was affected by it.
And so, even though you were scared to tell,
Mhm.
if someone had asked you, would you have told? For example, I look for things
Mhm.
because I operate, I parent from a place of loss, and
Mhm.
this world scares me, which I gotta lean into God. I trust Him.
Mhm.
Same time, I'm like, bro, I can't take like my son, and so I asked him when I pick him up from school, um, "How was your day?"
Mhm.
And I asked him like certain questions. Are there certain signs we should be looking for, like in a kid? Did your behavior change when you became abused? Like, someone should have noticed that, hey, little Shonda's not happy doing this anymore, or little Shonda's not enjoying jumping rope, or she stays with, like, the signs that parents should be looking for were to
I did not fit the checklist of things that they tell us to look for, right?
mm,
So they tell us to look for, change behavior. They tell us to look for excessive sleeping. They tell us to look for, um, what do you call it? Change in academic performance. I was a straight A student,
mhm,
never changed, right? They tell you to look for anger,
mhm,
or the overall change in emotional state. If the child was super happy and now they're super depressed, or
right,
if they used to be super depressed and now they're just happy all the time. They look for a change in overall appearance. You know, are they disheveled? Do they stop caring about their physical appearance and things like that? Again, I was 6. And so I don't believe that I knew how to process whatever it was. I didn't know how to suppress to process it, but some kind of way I figured out how to suppress it.
Mm.
You know, had no idea how to process it, but I knew how to. Okay, we're not going to deal with this. We're just going to act like it didn't happen. And it went on for a while.
Because most people say that I talk to now that
Mm-hmm.
they say that it kind of they just leave their body at the time to get
Right. That's
through it.
called dissociation.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
association, dissociate, just
Yeah.
to survive to get through it. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I hear, and I think that everybody thinks that they're like the worst part of their life is the worst thing ever. Like
Until the next worst
until
thing
you hear
happens.
right until
Right.
you hear somebody else's story. And then my famous line is, I sometimes I have conversations with my friends or conversation with people, and afterwards I say to my wife, let me go back and pick up my problems back up out the pile,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if I would have survived that. And it just takes away, it changes who a person had the potential to become,
Mm-hmm.
even if you get them so much help and so much therapy,
Right.
still changes who the person ultimately becomes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you think that it physically presents something in our bodies? Like if I get nervous, some people break out in the hives. So, is there something? Well, you said that there's not, you didn't fit the checklist.
I did not.
So you just went with your
I went on with
6
my
years
life. I
old.
will say one thing that I remembered. Um, I started biting my nails, like to the point where they used to bleed.
Okay.
And you know who broke me out of that?
Ooh.
Miss Patricia Richardson
Oh, well, she
in
saved
seventh.
a lot of lives. And
What?
she didn't
What?
even, I'm gonna leave her name in there.
Listen,
She
she
saved
didn't
a
even
lot of
know.
lives and she had no idea.
She did not even know. You know, she gave us so many little nuggets, throughout our seventh and eighth grade, the time that I had to spend with her. It was just some things that she said, and one day I just stopped. Like I legit just stopped biting my nails. I think it was in the seventh grade.
Yeah, that's when we met in 7th grade.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
seven.
I just stopped. I will say that in gaining education about different things, it is scientifically known that we do carry stress and trauma in our bodies. And
Mm-hmm.
so I did some studying on something called the ACEs. ACEs standing for Adverse Childhood Experiences. And so with the ACEs, we carry the trauma in our body. And it manifests itself as we become adults. And so it turns into diabetes, it turns into heart disease, it turns into gout, it turns into mental disorders, it turns into psychosis and things like that. And so yes, it's a true thing that the trauma that we experience, unaddressed trauma, turns into physical ailments.
So how do we have to address the trauma
Mm-hmm.
to the root cause of what goes on in your body?
Right.
Because I tell people all the time, well, I don't tell them all the time, so let me not say that. When I got vitiligo on my face,
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of research, and I think that's something that you're born with. And so, for me, at 40 years old, it started with a little speck.
Mm-hmm.
And over the course of a year, it just kind of like my face basically exploded. And it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
so much of just um, my cells stopped working. The things I would eat that would make, like, I would feel like my whole face was on fire. And so I talked with a lot of doctors, and I went to rheumatologists, and mainly, of course, the dermatologist. Of course, they
Mm-hmm.
tell you what you want to hear. But
Mm-hmm.
I said I had to look around and take inventory of my life and what was going on, and I realized that, oh, me and my brother had a huge, huge, huge fight. like a family shattering disagreement, like Godzilla and Mothra, and
Mhm.
the family you forced to pick a side. And so I think that is what distress. I never ever um, processed it like I should have or pursued it, and so I kind of just like swallowed it. And so I'm in with before he passed away, I was able to apologize, but it's something that happens in black families. It never gets resolved.
Right.
Apologize because I got tired of not speaking with my brother.
Right.
And so I just apologize. But in apologizing, you still don't get the closure and the
Mhm.
things that you need. And I learned that from Salima. Sometimes you just don't get closure, but that doesn't hearing it doesn't mean you physically and emotionally accept it.
Mhm.
And so I think that I hope people don't take this the wrong way, but I need people to understand like once he died, then my face started to clear up.
Mhm.
It's not because he died, but it's whatever that I had that wasn't
Made peace with
processed.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't. There's nothing I can do about it now. And
Mhm.
so it started to clear. I'm not telling nobody like you hope somebody die in your life to get closure, but
Absolutely not. That's
yeah,
that
I
we
just want to make sure because
that's
you
the
know people.
disclaimer. That's that,
That's the
that's not what we're
disclaimer.
supposed
I'm
No.
just saying like sometimes I learned that from the last recording night. Sometimes you don't get closure, but when you go to some therapist or you talk to these people that's online, you know, you got the online therapists and the people
Mhm.
that counselors, and you have to go through this to get healing, and you have to come to terms with it. No, sometimes you just don't get what you need from people to move on, and you have
Right.
to accept it, and that
Mhm.
is a difficult thing.
It is.
And
It is.
self confidence and self worth are two different things. I've always known from you walking in seventh grade. Again, I always tell people I was dealing with my own struggles. It
Mhm.
was I went to this previous school for from kindergarten to sixth grade, Louise A. Spencer School. So I
Mhm.
knew it was a block from my house. I knew everybody, and I was leaving everything I knew to go be with a bunch of strangers. And after being
Mhm.
with a bunch of strangers, not just for the 2 years, but for seventh and eighth grade, then you got 9 through 12. And
Mhm.
inside of that, what Selima pointed out was they dumped us in there with high schoolers.
Yes.
So
Some
we're,
adults.
yes.
Yes.
So
Okay.
I didn't know that it was, when she said to me that was hard to navigate, I was like, you know what it was? Because
Mhm.
you're kind of trying to figure out your place. And it's like you feel like you're doing a bid because I got to be here for 6 years. And it's going to be a
Yes.
while before I'm on top of the pecking order.
Right.
And I never forget is for we took the test at sixth grade to get in for seventh and eighth.
Mhm.
And then you have to take the you just automatically go to the high school. You gotta take the test
Yes,
again
to get into ninth grade.
to get in
Mhm.
ninth grade. And I remember trying to sneak out that door. I almost ended up at Shabazz. And I forget what my grandmother would have kicked my ass if I told her that I wasn't going back. But I was adamant about because seventh and eighth grade it was such a big time of adjustment. It was I had horrible grades. Miss Richardson didn't care. I mean, when I say she didn't care, is she wasn't Barbara Bush and it, like no person left behind.
Right.
You was
You
getting
was
this D if you
you were
deserved
going
this
to
A.
work. Yeah,
Yeah,
you were going
you
to
wanted
work.
to do your work, and
Mhm.
I wasn't. It was a lot for me. But I said
Mhm.
that to say self confidence and self worth are two different things. What convinced
I never
you? At what point?
truly believed that I was enough until I started seeking God, to understand Him for myself. I
Mhm.
never thought that I was enough. Regardless of what I portrayed on the outside, I carried all these insecurities. Never thinking that I was pretty enough, never thinking that I was worthy, never thinking that anything that I had to offer was enough. And it took for me to start asking God questions like, okay, so who are you really?
You asked him that?
Absolutely. I'll tell anybody I speak to God just like we're having this conversation.
Mhm.
Who better to go to than the person that, the he's the main source. He's gonna give you all the answers. And even though I still didn't fully understand him, then he met me where I was. And so it took for me to look at myself through his lens or as best I could, right? Because we're not God. Um, But it took for me to start asking not just him the hard questions, but asking myself the hard questions, and then not to blame, pointing a finger and accusing anybody. Like there were a lot of things that I needed to be accountable to for myself.
Mhm.
And so, once I started doing that, and still do, because none of us are perfect. Once I started doing that, I began to walk, a little back a little straighter, head a little, head up a little bit more,
Mhm.
and being able to speak positive affirmations to myself and actually believe it, as opposed to just saying things to impress. You know what I'm saying? It took some work.
How do you reconcile with no? How do you get past?
That was big for me. That was big for me. It's not big anymore. The help that I needed, I will never get it because my
Mhm.
offender passed away. And so when I finally had the courage to address him, I
Mhm.
learned that he had passed away. And so, in therapy learning, I wasn't girl. I was a therapist and didn't even know I was a therapist. Okay, so I decided to write a letter, just in full, like, this is what you stole from me. Because you did that, I endured this type of thing. And it was at that time that I kind of shared with my children some of my experience, but not, didn't give them any graphic details or anything like that. But I let them know that, there was somebody in my life that caused me pain when I was younger. And after I wrote the letter, I'm like, I don't have anybody to give it to. I burned it. Just let it go. Just burned it and decided that that was something else that I no longer wanted to carry. And I felt free to talk about it, honestly, not just give, the, oh yeah, somebody touched me when I was little spiel,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
cause it's more than that, we're not going to graze past that like that. But,
I think
um,
they grace past it because they want to talk about it because that's so. Sometimes therapy can become so deep,
it can.
and you
Mm-hmm.
gotta. Some people are okay with suppressing it and maybe having a flashback here and there during maybe a part of your relationship or not being able to be in relationships because it then walk back through because you got to walk back through that with the therapist
Mm-hmm.
in order to get help for that 6-year-old
Right.
little girl. You have to become her again.
Mm-hmm. No one. I started writing the book, and you see how it starts. After I wrote that chapter, I had to put it down for. It took me. The book is not very big or long,
Mhm.
right? But it took me a long time to write it.
Yeah.
After I wrote the first chapter, I had to step away from it because I had not processed any of that. It took me some almost a year, and then
People don't know that about the books where you're so vulnerable and so
mhm,
transparent. I think I throw up a lot.
really,
Yeah, because I remember
wow,
the first like interview about the book, and I'm getting dressed, and I just got really hot, and I just like threw up in the bathroom.
wow.
I think maybe because I put so much grief in one book,
Hmm.
and I feel like I just bled on the pages, but I feel so much. Sometimes I pick it up and I read it
Hmm.
like I never wrote it, and I cried. I remember one time it was on the back seat of the car, and I'm picking my son up from school, and he's flipping through the book. I know one day he's gonna read it, but he's like, "Mommy, you wrote this?" And I'm like, "Yep."
Hmm.
Who's this? Kimani's mommy down the back. Yeah. And he asks what happened. So I have to go to the store and I have to tell him of what type of man to not to become.
Hmm.
So how
Yeah.
old were you?
Uh, Let me see. My children were 3, 5, and 8. So my children, listen, they clown me to this day for this, right? I have always sat my children down, and like they would call us the Huxtables. Because you know how they would gather around and they would talk in the living room. I
Hmm.
always did that with them, even when they were small. And
Hmm.
so before we went in, I said, listen, we have to go into this place, and we're not going to be in we're not going back to our house anymore. We have to stay here. And we called it the unhappy place. It served its purpose.
Mm-hmm.
We were there for 3 months, from September to December of 2002. And so while we were there, they would ask questions, and I would just be as honest as I could with them, all while being mindful of, not trying to overwhelm them with too much information.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, they were small. The My boys don't remember as much as my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
They remember some things, but they don't remember as much.
Do as they're men now, do
Yeah,
they
with their own children.
with their own children? Are
Yes,
they great men?
they are great men. They are definitely great men, intellectual men. And I do see their struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I see their struggle, because they don't. I heard you. I was actually listening to one of your podcasts, and you were talking about the generational curses and people breaking generational curses. That's a thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's something else that we don't necessarily address. But there were things generationally that they have inherited, and so now they have to. They're learning how to unlearn, or they're learning how to navigate through some of these things on their own. um, but yeah, I would deem that they are great men.
But it's hard to say. I get this from my father or from my mother, and that's just the way. And
Yep. Right. They're not ready to be accountable. They're not ready to process. They're not ready to really get deep and, get knee deep in it. They're not. Mm-mm.
it's a struggle for me because I was never held accountable for anything
Yeah.
until I had to become a parent, and now
Mm.
my son holds me accountable, and it's a different style of parenting, and him holding me accountable might seem disrespectful because I never questioned anything my mother or grandmother or the people that my elders raised me told me to do.
That's how they raised us.
Yeah, I just
Don't
did
ask
it.
questions.
And he has
Mhm.
questions, and he has questions not to be disrespectful. He has questions because he genuinely wants to know why, and that's how his brain works. And
Mhm.
if I get angry out of fear, because if I tell you not to jump over something 5 times, it's because I know you're going to get hurt. And then
Mhm.
you jump over it and you hurt yourself. Now I'm yelling at you while you're hurt because I'm afraid that you hurt yourself, and the fear
That
translates
you're not.
comes
Yeah.
off as anger. And so
Mhm.
it's very hard to. I tried to grow before I had him. That's why I waited so long, because I knew that I wanted to be a different parent, and it's a steady growing process to grow in front of somebody while somebody's watching, because they're
Yeah.
watching like everything you do, and you have to um make when you make mistakes, you have to explain the mistake that you made that you know is bad, and for them not to repeat it. So
Right.
there's no do as I say and not what I do. I have to
Right.
actually walk the walk, which has been very difficult for me, because again, I've always just done what I wanted to do, and if I don't want him to
Mhm.
do what he want to do, then I have to be a better person. Which
Mhm.
people always probably want. Damn, why man he do a 360? Because there's a whole 180. Because there's a whole person watching me that is going to be out in the world one day,
Right.
and I care enough, and I don't want him to be an asshole to women, or I don't want him to think that he could just go into spaces and command the amount of respect that he didn't earn.
Right. Mhm. Hmm. My legacy consists of, just powerful impact. Powerful impact for the 6-year-old Shondas,
Mm,
you know, for the 18-year-old Shonda, that was almost raped. For the 20-something-year-old Shondas that, um, have low self-esteem, for the 30 something year olds, who are still trying to find their way. My legacy consists of, leaving an imprint, or should I say a blueprint, that someone else can follow, that will ultimately help to change their life.
that's a good one. A blueprint is a good legacy.
Yeah.
Somebody to follow.
Mm-hmm.
And you just
Yeah.
mentioned 17-year-old Shonda. You just turned 50, right?
Last week, yes.
Last week.
Shout out to the 50s club.
Shout out to the 50s club. So, if you right now, what you know right now,
Hmm.
would you tell 17-year-old Shonda?
Girl, leave him alone. Say no. Um, wait, don't do it. Don't do it. Let's see. I would honestly say learn the lesson with an S. Learn the lessons and move on and never stop loving yourself.
Never stop loving yourself is a good one.
Never stop loving yourself. Hmm.
Stop loving yourself. I have to
Yeah,
write that one down because there
definitely.
was something. And
Yeah.
I had a question that transpired recently because I listen to like a lot of pop culture. Whose job is it to work with the offenders, not the victims? And do you think?
Me being, I absolutely believe in redemption.
Okay.
That's when we can talk about the God that I serve, right? I absolutely wholeheartedly believe in redemption because God came for the offender and the offended, right? He didn't just come for he didn't God doesn't pick a side. I haven't always felt like that.
Hmm.
While I was the one being offended, off with their head, could have been my motto. But now growth and maturity has come into play, and it is someone's job, not mine,
Right.
not mine, not mine. It is, it is definitely someone's job. There are therapists out there that do work with, and there are people, not just therapists, but professionals that do work with the offenders. That is something that I know
Yeah,
that's not my
that's not
that's
your
not my
thing.
calling. You know, I'm not gonna lie and say that that's something I can get over and that's something that I want to do. It's not. I still mentally, as a human, as a woman, as a survivor, I still struggle with processing how anyone enjoys intimacy with a child as an adult,
Me too.
right? So
I'm not gonna tell
that's
you the words on the podcast because I'm gonna have to put X rated on it. What I think, like,
right.
what?
So right, and so because of that, I know that's not the work that I'm called to. I'm
Gotcha.
on, I'm called to assist the survivors, the ones that are causing the ones that's actually living through what it is that's been,
Mhm.
that trauma. That's what I'm called to. I'm not necessarily called to the offender, but there are people that are purposed to work
Mhm.
with that population of people.
How long did it take you to?
Ooh, um, have I? Um, Let me see. From 2002 to, I'm gonna say it took a long time,
Mhm.
and well over 10 plus years, 15 plus years. And forgiveness became bigger for me after losing my dad in 2018.
Mm.
And so I forgave him for myself, but I also forgave him so that my children can have peace.
Mm.
Hmm.
And how does your current husband sweep you off your feet with all that you
With all what?
with
All that
all
I've been
you've
through?
been through? How
Um,
does how
so my husband, I would say like he's like my husband is a unicorn. Like I ain't even gonna lie. My husband is a unicorn. He has never I've never even heard him judge my ex-husband.
mm.
I've heard him encourage prayer for him.
Ooh.
I heard him I've heard him encourage concern, like, is he okay? Is he all right? What's going on with him? And I'm like, I don't know. Like what are we doing right now? I honestly I don't know. But so that's why I said my husband is a unicorn. He's the one that says, um back to that word redemption,
Mhm.
that all we all have access to it. We don't actually, it's not even ours to grant. You know what I'm saying?
Grace. Yeah, it's grace.
It's not ours to grant.
Yeah.
But and then, so walking in a life of forgiveness, how can you not pray for our brother? Again, the offender, right? Listen,
Mm-hmm.
this is who I'm living with. This is who I'm loving. I'm living and living with and loving the man that offers prayer to, you know, everyone
Wow.
and for everyone. Every single day. Yep. Without fail. Every single day.
Like
Yep.
we gonna do this today, huh?
Right,
Okay.
right.
So everybody, um, 50 OU.
Yes.
You think back to 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade.
Mm-hmm.
17-year-old Mandy.
17-year-old Mandy. Ooh, 17-year-old Mandy was so mean to me.
You know
What?
why I was mean to you?
Why?
Because I found a friend and I thought you was taking my friend away, Rhonda.
We gonna blow that name out?
Yeah, she's my
Uh,
friend. Now I'm saying that like a friend. I
right.
take
You found, guess what? But you found her after she was already my friend.
I
And no,
did.
I don't. Yes, me and Rhonda was friends. So I'll explain it to this. Rhonda was quiet and she kept to herself, and like nobody really was talking to her.
She was your friend first, but you know we lived out. We went to university together.
Right, but we became friends in
Yes.
school before the posses and all that other
Yeah,
stuff was formed.
before
Right,
the separations,
right, right.
before
And
everybody separated.
I honestly was not trying to. I would say to you, I was not trying to take your friend.
Uh,
I was just trying to establish a friendship of my own because I didn't feel like I had a whole lot of friends.
and you never gave off. Like I'll tell a lot of people during that time I was struggling with my sexuality, and I was didn't have a lot of confidence in myself, and so
Hmm.
my confidence was being aggressive,
Hmm.
and so the people like the U's of the world, the U's of high school, I would say the Angelas, and even then the kids, you and the Samiras, you guys seemed like you came and you seemed like you had it all together and you knew you got good grades. You was on class on time. And here I'm like, I don't even know what to do with my hair this week. You
Hmm.
guys are walking around with your pocketbooks and your beauty supplies and y'all in the bathroom with and got the boys and I'm like, well, where do I fit in here? I played sports
Yeah.
for a while. I didn't like that. I had a boyfriend. I didn't like that. And I'm like, where do I fit in? So if I can't fit in, then I'm gonna shake up the room.
You just gonna disrupt everybody else, right? I'm gonna
Everybody else, because
mess
I
up
don't
what you
know
got
where
going.
I fit in.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a lot. And I did it. I realized I remember I don't remember Camilla. I'm okay with saying these certain names. Camilla. She went to school with us, and I seen her um, years ago.
Hmm.
Whenever I see somebody that we went to school with, I'm always excited because it was such a small group of people. It was.
Hmm.
I tell everybody when I talk to some people about their high schools, the district schools had like 500 kids.
We had 50 what?
I said I graduated with 50 people.
Like 50 some odd people.
50 people I
Right.
graduated with. And
Right.
so when I see one of those 50 people, I'm excited because 6 years is a long time to spend with somebody in your life. And
It
if
is.
I know I wasn't nice to everybody. So if I have a chance to apologize, and I seen her and I was so excited and she literally turned her back. Like
Wow.
she didn't even want happy. I wanted to say hi and she turned her back and I was just like, damn, I was bad. And I didn't mean to be. So you tell me to be ease up.
Huh?
You tell me to be nicer.
Yeah, definitely be nicer. I will also let you know that I would say to a 17-year-old man, you're not by yourself.
Mm,
You are not by yourself, and you're not the only one that's struggling and trying to figure out who you are.
mhm.
I know you feel like that right now, but you're definitely not by yourself.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That was my last question. That was this. I enjoyed this. That was good. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, if people, what is the work that you do? You wrote the book. There's hope on the other side.
Mhm.
You are a licensed social worker,
Yes.
W,
Mhm. Yes.
and you
And men.
and men in the
Mhm.
city for the city of New
Families.
York, or you have your own organization.
I am still in the city. I have multiple things going on right now. I do group therapy with at risk and high risk youth,
Mm-hmm.
and I also I'm a director of a daycare center currently,
Mm-hmm.
working with the littles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I am a clinical associate at St. Cofa Therapy. Uh, I should probably know the correct title of that, but it's St. Cofa. I could give you the information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's located on Academy Street in Newark, where we do provide therapeutic services.
That's right down there with diapers and all that stuff at.
Yeah,
You're
but
right in the mix
it's
of it.
private. It's private. It's black owned,
Okay.
by an amazing, my mentor. So I'm working with under her. I don't know.
You
I
know,
mean, it seems it's good, but like with everything else, the reason why I chose social work as a profession is because we have a lot of flexibility. So
mm-hmm.
I can be a director of a child care center. I can conduct group therapy sessions with youth and adults or women or all men. I could work in a school. I could work, so we can work anywhere. So I'm having fun with it.
Do men open up to you?
Absolutely.
Okay.
hmm Yeah, they do. Surprisingly. Yeah.
Good. So you go
hmm
home at night knowing that you've done some good.
Yeah.
That's a good feeling because most people work these corporate jobs or these jobs where they just make all this money and that's all they do is make a lot of money.
Right.
Sometimes
And
I
then
need
there's no impact. Yeah.
no. I struggle with that in corporate America for a long time. And I said the least I can do is work in a technical position. So at least I know that I'm fixing when I walk away from a piece of equipment that I fix, you would think that I cure cancer. How excited people are that I have something like a ventilator or
Yeah.
an EKG machine, something that's life saving.
Mhm.
That doesn't work. I feel like my impact is there.
Right.
And my book, surprisingly, it thrust me into a position that I didn't know. You got to be careful what you ask God for,
Mhm.
and a lot of times I don't. People look to me for answers that I don't have,
Mhm.
and so I find myself reading more or taking courses or going to conferences, strictly
Mhm.
to help people because if they might find it a safe space in me
Right.
that I was able to share. That's why I'm honest about who I was, the
Mhm.
17-year-old me, and who I am now. And that's why I remember I reached out to our mutual friend to get your information. I was like, she was like, what the heck are you up to? But I'm just thankful that 17-year-old menace.
Absolutely. I mean, come on, we grow up, right?
Yeah, we
And
do.
we have
We do.
we have we have survived the pandemic and we've seen a lot of things. We've suffered some things
Yeah.
together but separate, you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so, the scope of life, it just looks different now.
it does.
It looks different, it feels different, it presents different. And so I believe that our overall approach should be different because of that.
That's good.
Mhm.
And like my pastor said, you got to know when to stop preaching.
Uh-huh.
When the pastor said word, don't preach
Right.
over a good word.
Right.
So thank you.
Right.
I appreciate your time and I appreciate you and thank you for all the work that you do in the community and you have helped me. Um, I can go to sleep tonight and wake up tomorrow, my birthday, not as sad as I normally am about missing my cousin because I understand some things that you
Absolutely.
have to, they're just going to be what they are.
They're gonna be who they are. And one thing my mom always told us, like, you can't control the actions of other people, regardless,
No.
of how much you want to. Um, we just can't. We can think what we want in our minds, but we'll never be able to control the actions of another person. The only people that we can control is ourselves. That's it.
Mm.
Not even our children. Think about how many times you tell Jax to sit down or go somewhere and do whatever. In his little mind, he just bouncing again, right? He's doing whatever.
I
We
think he
can't
was
control
put
him.
here to test me, but that's another podcast episode. Thank you, Mrs. Brown, for your time. I
Thank you
appreciate it
so much for
sincerely.
the invitation. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
All right, and you have a blessed birthday.
I shall. I'm gonna be
All
off
right.
this
All
doing
right.
nothing. All right. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye-bye.